2013, 26 teams have graced the European LCS stage. Only 10 have advanced to finals. Fnatic, Alliance, and G2 Esports have all hoisted the trophy.
Home to some of the best players the world has ever seen, Europe has once again shown us that their pool of talent has no end.
Now the battle for the crown is closer than ever, with 6 teams fighting ferociously for the privilege of challenging the throne.
H2K are going to playoffs!
Gonna continue to solidify their dominance at the very top.
For the first time since 2015, Rocat's Talent Factory has forged a lineup worthy of playoffs. Meanwhile, H2K had to find and unlock their carries to make a surge in the standings.
Oh, Memento! You're beautiful, man! He stole it away! Who was gonna end the game? Rubicon now, what is this? Oh my god, H2K, that is beautiful!
Team Vitality, the most exciting set of rookies ever, flew out of the gate behind the Italian stallion and God Gilius himself.
Caps is in trouble. Suzuki looking for the outplay. Can he get that's one? Might just look for 2. He's feeling himself. I can hear him hollering on stage. He wants one more, and he's gonna get it!
After a static start, Splyce have found their footing. Now they are pressing onwards in the climb for the championship.
Cobby shreds through you. He gets the quadra. It's gonna be a penta for Cobby.
And onto our reigning champions, G2 Esports, led by Perkz, winning 4 consecutive titles.
But eyeing the throne are the old kings of Europe, who may have fallen from grace, but are back and ready to claim the trophy that was once theirs.
We have to win now. No way around that. We cannot wait any longer.
My legacy is not even close to complete. I'm just starting it.
I want my legacy to be as a leader who brought Rocat to the finals.
G2 are the kings right now, but I've killed a king before.
2017 was my year of frustration, but that's changing this year. The greatest EU LCS moment still has to come, because it's gonna be when I win it.
Fame is fleeting.
Legacy lasts forever.
Welcome to the opening day of the EULCS Spring Playoffs. Over the next 3 weeks, the best in Europe will fight to lift the trophy in the Royal Arena in Copenhagen, starting with tonight's quarterfinal between Splyce and Roccat. Hello everyone, I'm Eva Sjokkesporter here with Jonas Cold Anderson as well as Martin Fiscio Lunge. Double Danes on the road to Copenhagen. Couldn't be better.
We couldn't make playoffs, but we're here.
I mean, you would be here regardless, and we're
That's
very
true.
happy that, Cole, that you decided to join us to analyze all the games we have on the slate for this weekend. Let's cast our minds back to the end of last week of the regular season in spring and what the standings were at the end, because that makes us also, makes us see the 6 teams that got into playoffs. Rather, I was a bit thrown off cold because the Unicorns of Love didn't make it in last place in the end.
I feel like the best team is at the 10th place. I really don't
That's how it normally works, yes.
So
best team at the bottom.
Sadly, the Unicorns of Love didn't make it. However, Roccat and H2K snuck in there in the end, or snuck in. They deserved it in the end.
They fully deserved it. Of course, if you looked at like the rosters before the split started, it is a surprise that teams like Misfits and Schalke do not make playoffs. But after all these weeks and all these games, I think H2K and Roccat were the better teams.
For sure. Cold, what do you make of course, Fnatic was the undisputed #1, but what do you make of that battle for 2nd place and that G2 in the end won out over Splyce and Vitality?
I mean, we have to stress like the importance of how important it actually is to get the 2nd spot, because not only do you get straight to the semis, you also get to see your opponent play here in the quarter. So the fact that G2 got this spot is super important.
Super important. They bested Splyce and Vitality and got that bye. Fnatic looked dominating throughout the entire split. We'll see G2 and Fnatic in the semifinals, but this weekend we'll have Splyce versus Roccat as our first quarterfinal, followed by Vitality versus H2K tomorrow. And then the winners of these will move on to Copenhagen to the semifinal and go up versus G2 or Fnatic.
And of course, we do have reseeding in our playoffs, which basically means that here in the quarterfinals, the highest seed, in this case it would be Splyce, 3rd seed, cannot or will, of course, have to play against the lowest seed of the 2 teams in the semifinals, that is G2 and Fnatic. In this case, if Splyce wins, they play G2. If Roccat win, because they're the lowest seed of these 4 teams in the quarterfinal, they will have to play Fnatic, the highest seed.
So it only gets harder.
It only gets harder for Roccat. It's a tough road towards the trophy, but if they go all the way, they fully deserve it, of course.
Fully deserve it, and every game, or every match rather, in the playoffs is a best of 5, and then today's first game will start at 6 p.m. or in a couple of minutes, and tomorrow we will start at 5 p.m. for that second quarterfinal. And Cold, you know about the reseeding, you know about the teams, you know about the standings, and you also thought about which teams you think would make it to the final. You prepared your bracket. So
yeah, so basically I prepared the bracket, and I think from today's matches we will see a Splyce win against Roccat.
I believe we have a, yes, we don't have the bracket at this point, but you can talk us through it.
Because the predictions are so bad, we cannot show it.
But
so talk us through it.
So basically today we have Roccat against Splyce, and I think Splyce will take it. Tomorrow we have Vitality against Haze2K. I think it's going to be super close, but Haze2K is going to upset Vitality.
Oh.
And then in the end, I think it's all going to come down to Fnatic winning it all.
There we go.
Here we have and this is obviously going to be every result that is going to be, because I'm better at predicting games than the physio. So yeah, pretty much this is how it's going to look like. Fnatic is going to win. Reckless is going to beat MVP. I think that's how it's going to be.
Cole just made the entire
he wants to beat
already.
me. Fun fact, I have roughly the same. There's a few changes, but it's pretty close to what he actually picked as well.
And to both of you, nobody's going to come near Fnatic for that cup?
It will be a surprise.
It will be a surprise.
Hopefully someone can challenge.
I mean, Fnatic have looked good in a preseason before, in a regular season before, and then failed in playoffs. It could happen again. They're just the big favorites.
Hashtag everything can happen. Well, we're kicking off the playoffs today with Splyce versus Roccat. And starting off with Splyce, they had a slow start to the split, ups and downs, one-on-ones every single week. But they managed to pull it together in the end. Cold, what do you make of their resurgence by the end of the split, turning into a very solid team?
I mean, basically at the start of the split, I thought Splyce was probably one of the worst teams in the league. They didn't really do anything in the early game. They were pretty much relying on Kobe and Kasing pulling it through in the late game. But what we have seen throughout the split is that they have grown and they have become a team that can carry from other places too. We see Circe and Oramne stepping up huge, and I think these are the core players we should follow today.
Well, it was Kobbe, only the Kobbe show. He carried so many games. He got so many player of the games official, but steadily on, Splyce developed into a very well-rounded team.
Yeah, I think they learned, first of all, how they want to draft to set up other members to do well. Nisqy started playing more roaming mid laners, so he could actually impact the other lanes. And if you look at the numbers, the first 5 weeks, they were the worst early game team in the league. That was really bad for Splyce. If you go towards the last few weeks, they've actually turned into the second best early game team just based on these numbers here. So it's a huge change, and a lot of it comes down to them getting Oramne ahead in the early game. And of course, that bot lane always just doing fairly well.
Coach Peter Dunn there is just showing the guys, look how good you were, keep that up for the final weeks.
Or he's pointing to the first fight, being like, yeah, look at that, guys, not bad.
Well, a big point in that resurgence of the early game of Splyce was Xerxes, their jungler, and a lot of people have said, well, right now, he's the best jungler in the EULCS. Cold, what do you think?
I mean, so basically, I thought he was kind of a victim of how they played early on in the split, where he couldn't really showcase anything. What I have been really impressed by him in the later stages is he's been way more dynamic than he was in the past. He would be like kind of just a farming jungler, farming up, scaling, not really doing anything. But the past couple of weeks, he has been very dynamic with his pathing. He has been ganking a lot more. He has been pressuring the map, and I think it's for sure that he is the best performing jungler right now.
And he and his team, a very strong team, as in our first quarterfinal going up versus Roccat. It's going to be tough for Roccat, but it's the first time they made playoffs since 2015, so they're going to make it or want to show us something. It's not going well today, Martin, so take it away and tell us about Roccat.
I'm the host now. We want to look, first of all, at how Roccat started this split, because they actually looked super good the first few weeks with pure teamfight comps. They were very quickly to realize you have to draft for late game. No one can finish games early anyway, and then we suddenly had like Blank and Hikyu actually looking very good on these late game carries. So they picked up a lot of early wins, which was very good for this team and surprised us quite a bit. Middle of the split, however, they tried to innovate. They wanted to be a split-pushing team. We saw a lot of Blank in one lane, Profit in the other one. It didn't work. They lost a bunch of games, and they actually ended up on this 5-5 score after 10 games, so right in the middle of the EULCS. And a lot of people were kind of debating, will they make playoffs or will they not? Well, they showed us towards the end that they actually were good enough to make playoffs, because when they played against a team like Misfits here in Week 9, they managed to actually basically destroyed him in this game, and have done it twice already, and knocking Misfits out of playoffs and making sure that this Rocket lineup gets in that top 6. They fully deserve to be here, and while they're not the favorites to this game, I think they have something to offer.
They have something to offer. They 100% deserved it because they are on stage right now. But Cold, it is fair to say that they are the absolute underdogs versus Splyce.
Definitely. I think the problem I see for Rocket in this series specifically is that they kind of do the same thing. They both want to kind of scale to the later stage of the game, and I just feel like Splyce has more reliable carries, and especially the AD carry. So I think that's where they have the edge.
All right, we'll see. But for Roccat, there is a chance. So what do you guys identify as the strong points? What are the keys to victory if Roccat are going to take this match home today?
So, I mean, the main key to victory is going to be Memento in the jungle. I think a lot of pro players are already praising him for a very strong split. And no matter what we talk about now in terms of other win conditions, it's all about Memento setting these kind of win conditions in motion. It all, to me, then starts with him. And then I see one win condition be Blank in the mid lane. We've seen multiple times this split. They get to late game with him on a champion like Azir. He becomes a big carry. And as long as Memento can make sure he gets ahead in his lane, they can actually rely on the late game, where I do believe that Blank is actually a better player than Nisqy. So it is a potential win condition for them.
That is an opening for them because Splyce and Nisqy has been the weakest performing member on Splyce. We can openly say that, so that could be an opening. Cold, what do you make of the bottom lane of Roccat? Is there any opportunities there?
Yeah, so I looked at the Splyce bottom lane specifically, and I think as much as we praise Cobba and Kasing for being super reliable later in the game, they haven't really shown as much in the early stage, where the laning phase has been kind of iffy at times. So I think putting Norscaran and more aggressive supports, making Memento enable him to play aggressive, could be a condition for Rocket to get early leads.
And if everything fails, then maybe we get to see Profit on a carry again. We have seen the meta kind of go that direction up in the top lane. While he's only been playing tanks the last few weeks, he's had a week now to prepare. I've seen a lot of Swain in on his solo queue account. There's a lot of GP being played as well. There is a chance they put him on something where he can actually deal a ton of damage, and they try and play a bit around him. Try and shut down Odoamne in the early game, which has been the main way for Splyce to get ahead early on. So there is actually options in all 3 lanes. It's very different how they're going to play around them, but it all comes down to Memento setting up one of these three lanes.
Roccat have got options, they've got ways in, but somehow I feel like none of you really believe that Roccat can do it today. What are your predictions?
I'm on Splyce 3-0 for this one. I think the coaching staff...
I like that because most people go, oh, they'll win and then it'll be a 3-1. I did the same thing. It's kind of the wussy prediction.
If you go 3-0, you're pretty boring, in my opinion.
No, if you go 3-0, you're...
Oh, sorry, 3-1, yes. If you go 3-1. 3-0, you're pretty awesome.
Well,
that's all
I'm apparently pretty boring. But I think with what I thought Rocket approach would be to the game, by playing over the bot lane, they should at least get a single win. I don't think they will take the series, but I think Splyce will take it 3-1.
Well, we'll see. And you can also, well, weigh in on if you think that these guys are awesome or not. In tonight's edition of the EULCS post-game lobby, you can ask Cold and the Fishu about anything, but mostly about the playoffs. Just hit us up at LOL Esports on Twitter or Copenhagen with your questions using the hashtag, rather, ping the lobby, and then we'll check in on those at the end of the show. For now, though, it's finally time. We are ready to get started with the EULCS Spring Playoffs here from Berlin. Pyra, take it away.
Thank you very much, Shucks, and hello all you esports fans out there. I'm Devin Pirate Technics, and of course, joining me to call all the shots today is Andrew Vedius Day. How are you doing, my friend?
I am excited. We have a best of 5 today, Pyro. We've had a whole season of best of 1. Let's see what these teams can draft coming into an extended series.
Adaptation, changing things up on the fly. Now, Splyce have selected red side for game number 1. They do have side selection for games 3, and potentially, if there is that game 5. But looking at Splyce, looking at Rocket, obviously this is one very favored matchup for Splyce, but we'll see what Rocket can pull out. They got tricks in the back.
And I'm so excited for this draft. How will teams have prepared? I feel like there's going to be a lot of jungle focus towards both sides, given that Xerxes has had a bit of a limited pool so far this split. But right now we're yet to see any jungle bans come out. The Swain being banned away. definitely suggests the Roccat looking for an early either Caitlyn or maybe Skarner priority.
Yeah, we've only seen a jungle ban on the side of Splyce. That was Kha'Zix off the board, followed by the Azir. So they take a shot at Blanc's most played champion, and the Tahm Kench is off as well. Going forward, Roccat, they mix things up a little bit here. Do we see any of those jungle bans come through for that final?
Ooh, well, that's the real question. Ryze actually being banned away, so 2 of Blanc's most played mid laners will be taken off the board. Next, he will typically move towards the Corki, but on 8.5, he kind of has fallen off in priority. And we did get to see a bit of his Anivia last week against H2K, where he did have that unfortunate wall. Still, though, overall, felt like he had a very solid performance, so we'll see what Blanc moves on to throughout the rest of the series. But no Zac bans, no Skarner bans, no Olaf, no Caitlyn. There is a lot available to play with for both these teams.
Yeah, for both these junglers especially. Now, I wonder if they decide to first pick it up or if instead it's more of a bot lane focus. Roccat decide to lock the Xayah early for HeatQ.
So there's a bit of a pivot here from Roccat. Typically from HeatQ and Norscarian, you would see a priority on things like the Caitlyn and the Braum, but naturally with the Braum being banned away, they're going to go towards the Xayah likely Rakan combo. Now Splyce, given that there are a lot of top laners available, Sion could be an early priority for them. Skarner would also be another good early pick to secure herself a strong top side of the map, which is something that we've seen Splyce do a lot over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it would be right in their playbook. No reason to change it up in game number 1. However, Splyce decide to use their first pick to take the Caitlyn to match on 80 carries. Something Kobbe's been very proficient at this split. Do they follow it up with that jungle pick? There are so many options here, and only 10 seconds remaining to see what Xerxes takes.
Well, one of his big comfort picks has been Zac throughout the split, but locking it in this early could be a bit of a gamble, given the sheer amount of junglers that are up and available. Looks like the Sion will be the priority. Now remember, you can flex it to both top and mid. Splyce do have that option in Niski. He has shown a lot more of an impact when he's allowed to play those roaming mid laners. Things like the Galio really fit his playstyle and really fit in what Splyce like to do, which is largely pair around the top side or enable their bottom lane duo.
Right, and it does seem like it would be a bit of a throwback if they decide to put Odoamne on the Sion. It is definitely in the dog champ tier list, as we heard on the Euphoria podcast this week. Rakan's been locked in, though, so Roccat managed to pair the Lovers bot lane, and we'll see what they spend their final pick on. Skarner, it's been on our minds, on our lips, this entire pick and ban phase. This is where Memento grabs it, and it is.
Feel like that for Roccat, Skarner is one of the best junglers for Memento. Good early game impact, strong potential to snowball, has the ability to gank a lot, and can also have a lot of mid-game power. The also added value of forcing your opposition into getting that QSS makes a lot of sense, but it ties in with the Tahm Kench ban that we have seen. Splyce going to answer with the Morgana. I feel like this is something that we've been seeing Kissing practice a lot in terms of his solo queue.
Right.
He's been bringing out in preparation, and they're going to bring it out today.
Yeah, well, we've seen some really impressive Morgana games in the European LCS especially. It is right up Kissing's alley with a lot of those range type of supports.
Very
It's
true,
very
very
big,
true.
good deterrent from things like the Skarner. But now we're in ban phase 2. It's more mid-target bans at blank. The Anivia, already gone.
Yeah, you're really narrowing that pool right now for Blanc. What else will he be able to bring out? So far this split, his only other champion is the Corki and the Galio. And you would imagine that given that Galio so far has a 100% presence in Europe on 8.5, that it will likely be banned away. And if it's not, Roccat could very well look to pick it up for themselves.
Yeah, Splyce also still have yet to grab their jungler, so Roccat, they're removing the Olaf. It's not something we saw Splyce play just yet, but it has been making a pretty big impact around the world.
I guess Roccat are assuming that it is within the wheelhouse of Xerxes, even though he hasn't yet played it on the LCS stage. I imagine a Zac ban to follow up, given that it is just simply a big comfort pick for Xerxes, forcing Splyce onto something like a Sejuani to then round out the vast majority of their composition. Instead, they are compensating for the potential of Sion to flex from top to mid, and they don't want to give Odo that Vlad, which he's had a lot of success with him recently.
Yeah, 3 games on that, actually, leading up to the end of the regular split. And Odo kind of let off the leash, no longer on those dog champs. Maybe he'll pick up something else to carry with. The Galio is also banned away, though, as you pointed out. It leaves the Zac open, so this would be a pretty easy lock-in for Xerxes.
Ooh, I feel like this is a bit of a risk. Xerxes has shown so much expertise on this champion. It really is one of its comforts. He was playing this last year before it was even meta, and it just fits into his wheelhouse. It enables a lot of strong early ganking power. It's fantastic in terms of team fighting, and it can be used as a stall tool in the mid game if Splyce fall behind in the early. But what I'm expecting already is a lot of investment towards the top side of the map.
Yeah, now there's a Taliyah locked in, so this gives Rocket a chance to maybe answer some mid lane roaming with a bit more of their own. And so with Blank already had a few champions targeted his way, he decides to take something a little different.
So right now, just the hovers of Aatrox, throwback to Freddy122, coach of Roccat, his famous champion from back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And it looks like that they are just going to go for a bit of a safe standard Prophet, top lane champion. Gnar was something that he played a lot during the early seasons, but he actually doesn't have the best record on it, Pyra. 2-6, I believe, during the regular season, where Roccat failed to really execute on the 1-3-1 style, but that seems to be the playstyle that they're gunning for in this draft.
Yeah, interesting. They've had so much more success on the team fighting compositions, but maybe this is why they're throwing the curveball. They could have been practicing this the week leading all the way up to it. But now, the only mystery left is what Splyce are going to lock in as their final choice, and it's a Kassadin on the mid, so we will see Odoamne taking the Scion.
Okay, so a lot of interesting things to note about both compositions. First thing, Roccat, always going to be looking to play through bot lane. You've got to remember that the great thing about Xayah Rakan, a lot of engage available, and you have the ability to roam with Taliyah down towards the bottom side of the map once you hit level 6, and it can be rather difficult for Kassadin to follow, even though he's a pretty quick guy himself.
Yeah, he'd be rift walking.
So they have Prophet on a strong laner into the Scion, who's often considered absolutely fine into the Gnar, so that'll be relatively even, but you would expect in the early levels a lot of push, a lot of harassment, and they're kind of just going to leave Prophet on an island, look to play towards their bottom lane. Whereas Splyce, they've drafted themselves a little bit more scaling, but they do have strong pushing power down towards the bottom side of the map. You have a lot of range on the Caitlyn, you have a range support in the Morgana, the Black Shield can make it difficult for Hiku and Norscarin to engage in, so they may look to play through bot lane themselves, but mainly they're looking for scaling.
Alrighty, now after conquering the Misfits, stepping over Schalke, Rocket are in the playoffs for the first time in 3 years, but they are facing a monstrous foe here. The Splyce Serpent is known for squeezing the life out of that weaker prey, but there may be more to Rocket than meets the eye. Can they surprise Splyce, slip past them, and secure a spot in the semifinals? Let's find out as we load up onto Summoner's Rift for Game 1 in this best of 5.
This is going to be an exciting quarterfinal. Splyce versus Roccat, both fighting for a spot in Copenhagen. Our crowd is pumped. We are pumped, Pyra. There's going to be some good quality.
We are very, very excited. This is going to be an excellent one. Now, I know I'm alone in my possibly mad prediction of giving this one over to Rocket, but I think it's going to be a hell of a series either way, Vedius. And Roccat trying to play on the 1-3-1 composition. We'll see if it works for them.
Now, you've got to remember, the level 1 power of Morgana is strong. The Dark Binding, I've been told, can last longer than the Bibles since its creation. That sentence, really poorly formulated. Point is...
But it lasted about as long as a Dark Binding.
Exactly that, right? And the point is that you have a lot of threat in the level 1. So Roccat, they've just spread themselves pretty evenly apart. They do have eyes on the Kassadin in the middle lane. Will Splyce look to go for any sneaky level 1 shenanigans?
Oh, that's always the question. Splyce have shown themselves to have, just a wide variety of abilities and playstyles since they were known as that late game team for a while, really turned things around and made it more of an early game. Well, we also talk about their experience too. I mean, these guys have been in so many playoffs and so many postseasons over the years, every single one of their lineup.
Yeah, this is a veteran roster. We talked about it at the very beginning of the split, and this is just some of their examples. Splyce's prior playoff appearances. So before this one, we haven't included this one. You can see Odoamne, 6 out of 6, Xerxes, 2 out of 2, Niski, he was one over in North America.
Does that count?
It does. Corby was in 3 out of 4, and Kasing was at 4 out of 5. So these guys, they've been in playoffs a lot, Pyra.
Yes.
And when you compare that to a team like Roccat, it paints quite a different story.
Yeah, Rocket have actually never had any of their members participating in post-split play because they just haven't had the chance. I mean, they have a couple of rookies between Blank and Norscarin, and EQ, Prophet, Memento have just never really had that opportunity.
And Prophet, while he did qualify for playoffs with SKT, he never actually had an opportunity to play in it. And it's one of those situations where the experience gap between these two teams is rather large. And that's what makes it quite fascinating, because the strain of a best of 5, being in that scenario, having to actually prep for it, is just so different to the regular season of the best of 1s. And you have to see how well Roccat will be able to adapt in this kind of environment. How well prepared have they come in? Because you know that with the talent and with the experience that Splyce do have, they're certainly going to come in prepared.
Oh yeah, and that could absolutely spell trouble for Roccat. in this one, but if they can get ahead early, if they can build up enough of a bulwark against Splyce's aggression and get to the late game where they're familiar, where they're comfortable, they can pull it off. Now, we are definitely watching in this mid lane for those level 6s to come in. It'll be a while, but we want to see those roaming plays.
And I love talking about this mid lane matchup as well, because Kassadin does extremely well into mages like Anivia and Taliyah that just have this hard push once he gets a couple of levels under his belt.
Because right now, he's definitely not having a great lane.
In the early laning phase, it is very rough. You're a melee champion, you have to get super close, you don't have much pushing power, and you have to sit there and eat all this harassment. He does have the teleport, so he can come back into lane, but once he hits level 6, once he's completed like the Catalyst and he starts building towards what I imagine will be the Rod of Ages, that's when he can be really aggressive and he'll actually outscale and win a lot of the trades versus champions like the Taliyah. Unfortunately, until he gets there, he's going to have to just suffer.
Yeah, he's going to have a bad time for a little bit, but I want to point out somebody else on the ROCCAT lineup, because Prophet, again, we talked about his Gnar being maybe not the most successful in terms of win rate, but something that he was incredibly comfortable on. And Splyce have been very confident that he's a big weak point for this team. We heard it on the podcast as well. Ottawamne was thinking that the top lane is very exploitable, and maybe if they can shut it down early, that Gnar is not going to be very useful on only 1 or 2 items come the mid game.
And you can see that typically Gnar would have a pretty strong lane advantage. You know, has a lot of harass potential. He is a ranged top laner. He has the slow built into his Q, which means that it gets very easy to just stick onto a target and look for a lot of opportunities. But we've got to move away from the top lane for a second, because I can see Memento hanging around towards the middle lane. Could potentially look for a gank. Instead, he's going to back off. Xerxes now in the middle lane. This could be an opportunity, Pyra.
Those could be coming in. Xerxes is going to get ready for the leap. Hops over. They get the silence on Taliyah. It's a 1-2 punch, but Memento is zooming in for the revenge effort. Let's see if they can get Xerxes popped down. No, he flashes away, but Memento follows, turns him into blobs. Can they kill him before he pops back up? Nisqy is chasing him back, and he might have a chance to get a kill right here. The Comet comes in, but it's not enough.
So the counter gank comes in from Memento. The only reason why he was allowed to do this, well, 2 reasons actually. He was already in position to look for a gank mid, but also the wards behind the Baron pit, this early vision being invested from ROCCAT, enabled them to keep tabs on Xerxes and give Memento the counter gank. And this ties in beautifully to what we've been prepping all week, Pyra, which is ROCCAT, they're a fantastic vision-based team. They're one of these teams that just invest so much into early vision because they don't really like going for a lot of early leads. They like to keep tabs on where the enemy jungler is. They like to see what's going on. They're in fact second in the league in terms of wards per minute per game on average, and they are second in the league for control wards purchase per game per minute. These guys invest so much in vision early on that they basically just want to keep tabs and have a good understanding of what the enemy is trying to do.
Yeah, and this is what allows them to often get into those late game stages. They neutralize the aggression that other teams have. And I mean, it's obviously not just Memento, but he's a big part of really getting some of that vision down for the team and making sure that even a team like Splyce is going to have a hard time catching them unawares.
And this could be a good opportunity for ROCCAT, because one of the big ways in which Splyce has been dominating week 6 through 9 is through Xerxes, setting up a lot of early game ganks, largely through the top lane. But with the control that ROCCAT is so well known for, they're just keeping tabs on the enemy jungler and allowing these laners to play their style.
Yeah, and it's a good thing you mentioned what they've been doing since week 6, because it's such a transformed team. They've been so different because they've just kind of played together. There's been a few players especially who have just kind of really stepped it up.
You can certainly see that. Ooh, speaking of the duo that may step it up.
All right, Memento, he's going to get caught. Xerxes and Ottawamne bashed him. And let's see if Blanc and Prophet can come in to turn the tide here, but Nisqy's even going to follow. Flashes forward to pick up first blood. Hell of another blade right there.
And we praised ROCCAT for their early vision, yet it was Memento that backs on top of a ward. Xerxes was able to move towards the top side. They set up for the collapse with all 3 members, and even though Blanc got there first, it is Nisqy that secures himself first blood. This is the early lead that Splyce were potentially looking for to enable him to scale towards the later game. Splyce, that's a great start for them.
Absolutely. So, it's been a little more quiet on the bottom side. We talked about maybe playing towards that, but ROCCAT have been sniffing a little bit further than maybe is necessary this early on in the game. It's Memento getting caught out. So, Nisqy will be pretty happy with the fact that he's got that kill early on Kassadin. Somebody's going to scale hyper aggressively into the late game.
Exactly that. And considering how far behind he was put early on, securing that kill will benefit him a lot in terms of experience and gold. Now that he's hit that level 6 mark, Blanc has to show him a lot more respect, but there's the ward. You can see it just sitting right next to Memento just before his back was cancelled. It ended up interrupting him, and then we have Nisqy use the Blast Cone, Flash, E, and the Q combo to secure a very easy kill.
Yep, nicely played by him. Now, a big part of the Splyce success story we were talking about right before that kill happened is these two players. The Romanians have really been stepping it up. Odoamne, especially when he's unlocked on some of these more aggressive and less tanky champions.
Yeah, for
Ignore
sure.
the Scion.
Yeah, the week 6 to 9, you can just see the jungle proximity that Xerxes has exerted, and the amount of early kills that they've been able to find has been very impressive for this duo. And so far, they've been able to find some early kills, but now Roccat trying to answer back in the bottom side. Good chip damage down to Kobe. You can see Blanc roaming around as well.
They know he's here, though. Who's he going to impale? Gets exhausted immediately. Weaver's Wall's coming out and teleport Xerxes. They want to turn on Black Shield on top of him, looking for the Kabi damage. He's going to pull Memento back into 5 members of Splyce.
And Splyce read the play beautifully. They're now going for the chase onto Blanc.
Oh, boy. Blanc's in some trouble right now. Tries to get the knock away. Nisqy chasing him down, and the rest of Splyce are coming through. Welcome to the jungle, property of Splyce.
Things falling apart in the early game for Roccat. They wanted to play through bot side, and while we did see a decent counter gank from Memento in the middle lane, it cost him his flash, and then he didn't look to play towards the bottom lane where they had the Zyra and the Khan. And now that it's a little too late, Splyce very clearly read the play. They had the double TP prepared. They got there before Roccat could execute, and now they've secured themselves 3 very early kills.
That's that difference in experience really shining through already in this game, where 3 kills to none, and it's not even 10 minutes on the clock. This is definitely rough for Roccat. They're going to have to hang on for a while if they want to fend off the Splyce boys.
So now we're not even 10 minutes into the game. Remember that Splyce have gone for a little bit more of a scaling composition with the Kassadin and the Caitlyn, and this early game, it's kind of the thing that Splyce wanted to avoid. So decent chip damage from Roccat. They're getting very far pushed up into the lane to allow the minion wave to hit the tower, then look for the dive. But unfortunately, the double TP comes in from Roccat. Xerxes reads the play well in advance, is able to move towards the bottom side. They set up the successful counter gank, and they end up with 5 people bot versus the 4, and now Roccat fail once again to find another opportunity.
Yeah, it's been rough. Even though they do have the roaming ability, they're just not bringing nearly as many people there, and we haven't really seen Prophet been able to get involved. And he's, of course, gone for the Mercury Treads first as well, so while he's going to be able to chase down Odoamne here, his damage is kind of lacking at the moment. And we really need to see if he's going to have these impact in team fights, despite the fact that Roccat are kind of building for the 1-3-1.
And the thing is, you got to remember that Splyce, they can actually match a lot of the 1-3-1 should Roccat even try to set it up, because Kassadin will be able to outscale the Taliyah, and he's currently sitting on 3 kills with already a completed Rod of Ages 10 minutes into the game.
Yeah, that's not who you want to feed early on as the Kassadin.
No, it is not, and Sion will always be fine in Tanash. You can see a bit of a deficit really starting to form, but in the grand scheme of things, he should be able to hold a Gnar in the late game. He will just go full tank, and he will be absolutely fine. So it was pretty important for Roccat to find this early lead, especially with the Skarner. So far they haven't been able to do it. That doesn't mean things are completely lost just yet. They need to find more opportunities to gank bot. Both TPs are down. Xerxes hanging around mid. Blanc will still always have push over a Kassadin. And so they just want to try and find another roam towards the bottom side of the map, see if they can find a couple kills, and if they can secure an early tower against the Caitlyn, that's definitely a window of opportunity where they can then start moving the Zyra Khan around.
Yeah, he's got to be careful. Xerxes gunning for him right now as he flashes away but gets pulled back by the goo on the roots. See if they can make the play with the teleport coming in. Xerxes is already flashed out, and in comes Memento as well. Fast being wiggled, and Mega Gnar. Xerxes is going to get popped down once again. This is surely going to be a kill picked up for Roccat. All they've got to do is polish off the pieces, and it goes the way of Blanc.
So Roccat finally get a kill onto the board. They counter gank Xerxes effectively. He commits pretty hard into trying to get the kill onto Blanc. But then the TP comes in from Prophet. This is the TP advantage we were talking about. They're now moving towards the bot side. Memento still has his ulti up. Will they go for the tower, or will they look to just go for a couple of extra? Blanc is around as well. Does have his ulti too.
All right, just gonna start back, and instead looks like they just opt to take the tower. This will help them in the gold game for sure, knocking that one down quickly. So Roccat definitely undeterred by the fact that they had a few poor attempts early on. Fire right back, get a kill, get a tower.
So this is good for Roccat. This is the kill from earlier. We already saw
we wanted
this.
to show it twice.
We did want to show it twice. So this was the play that we wanted to show you guys. This was Xerxes just basically diving in. He's trying to utilize his ulti to not get CC'd, run away, but then Prophet's like, you know what, I'll trade Flash for Flash, I'll drag you back into my team, and then they're easily able to pick up the kill. Unfortunately for the bottom lane of Splyce, they couldn't rotate up. They were pushed under their tower by the Zyra Khan, which meant that they could immediately then transition towards the bot side. Roccat, good recognition that with Xerxes out of the picture, it becomes much easier to dive. Both teleports were still on cooldown, and this is what we were saying, right? The early game isn't completely over yet for Roccat. Even though they fell behind a little bit, they still have the ability to force a lot of these plays, and now they're looking for a mid-tier 1.
Well, they can force the towers. They've got a lot of damage on that, and a quick charm, and Poland back in. Hikyu's going to knock down Xerxes. Pain Train's coming in looking for Blank. They're going to knock right into him, and Niski's going to get immediate revenge. Mid laner for jungle.
So it ends up being a 1-for-1, but Roccat, they still have pressure. They should be able to secure this tier 1 tower. They're not letting the momentum slow down. Everything starting to pick up now for Roccat.
And forget about 1-3-1, and they're just sieging down. Splyce haven't been able to find an answer here. We'll take a look at how that play unfolded again with the Zac hopping in, insta-charm.
So this was something that we saw from Xerxes against Misfits, where he would basically just dive in on the Zac and utilize the fact that he has the passive, he has the rest of his team, to basically just stay alive and help wave clear. Unfortunately, he was not expecting the immediate re-engage from Roccat underneath the tower. They were able to find a kill. It was a good roam down from Odo that was able to at least equalize the kill, but Splyce, they still lose the tower. They're now down 2-0 in favor of Roccat. And now Hikyu and Norscaran, they can just move up towards the top side, and Roccat can look to play towards that side of the map. Rift Herald is available too. Remember, they still have Skarner. The thing they have to respect is the fact that there is no teleport on their side versus the double TP that is now up for Splyce. So a dive up towards top lane could result in a 5-man party once again from Splyce.
It also always seems wherever Roccat want to go, Xerxes is also there. The guy is just incredibly quick on the draw, despite the fact he's just wearing the brown bags on his feet. And once again, he's going to find Norscaran hanging out near the Rift Herald, but he's got friends. So Norscaran can't go for the 1v1 right now. So does he, though. Gets the charm up, Battle Dance, and they knock him right in. Kasing is the one they were looking for, who gets the Soul Shackles onto Memento as Xerxes pulls him right back in. Hikyu coming forward. Nobody wants to take this fight right now, though. Or maybe Splyce do. Decimating Smash flashed away.
Not is here.
Gonna jump forward. Let's see. He's got a 3-4-man knockup right now, and in comes the Gnar. Prophet trying to stack that bar, and Niski's going to get a kill quickly before it all happens. Odoamne getting the help of a heal from one of his teammates. Prophet stacking the Gnar bar, looking to go forward. They take down Odoamne, and that is going to be the end of it for now.
Ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. We talked about the double TP risk, but fortunately Roccat, recognizing it, used the window that they had built up in bot side to move Prophet over to the middle lane so that he could join his team. But Roccat, they were a little over-eager to force the fight before Prophet was really in a position to contribute. Almost ended in disaster. Still 1-for-1 now. Splyce, they're the ones that have pressure top side. They're looking to get a bit of damage down onto the tower.
Might just be able to do it, but I think the scary thing about all these fights is that every single time Splyce gets a kill, it's Niski picking it up.
Just look at how this all starts. So again, look at your mini-map. You can see that Sion TP's in before Prophet is in a position to contribute to the fight. So it actually starts off in a 3 versus 4 situation in favor of Splyce, but then the moment Prophet joins, Norscaran goes for another re-engage, a good wall to cut off the escape, but then Xerxes with the ultimate drags in Norscaran to the rest of his team. They have the range advantage, and then it's only Odo who, with no longer a flash available, gets chased down by the immense slows and long-range poke from the side of Roccat.
You can see who's doing the work in that fight, of course. Blank really making up the bulk of the damage for Rockat's side. Still, though, Norscaran, even though he went down, it was a nice setup with the Grand Entrance. He was able to pretty much knock up the entirety of the Splyce team. He's definitely had a harder time on some of those champions that are maybe not quite so tanky as his favorites like Braum.
Also true. On Norscaran, though, I feel like he is that kind of playmaker individual, and already we've seen him make a lot of plays this game, so I imagine that trend will only continue. Norscaran, speaking of, will now look to get a lot of deep vision down towards Splyce's top half. They will gain priority down towards bottom lane. You can see Prophet pushing that lane out now. Odoamne, he's grouped up, or he's starting to move up through the river. He's going to be forced to catch this wave, and this is, again, where they can use the fact that Prophet, he has teleport over Odo, so he can actually stay down here and keep the pressure on if he wants, or he can just group up with the team and look to try and use this window to get deeper vision down towards Splyce's side of the map, because they won't be able to match the 5 versus 5, and Roccat can just use numbers advantage to gain pressure over Splyce.
There are so many things that were flying around up towards this top side at the moment, though, because both Roccat and Splyce want to try to contest out for the Rift Herald. It's Roccat who got the priority on it. Got it already down to half health. Kasing Kabi sniffing around to see if they can maybe find a way in, but it doesn't look like it's happening. So Roccat, this will help them to be able to push down these turrets a little faster.
This is what we were talking about. Note here how Profit moved up towards the top side, grouped up with this team, utilized the fact that they have 5 members, and now Splyce, they're pivoting towards bot. While that was all going on, Nisqy roamed down. They now have 2 members here, but given that Roccat have the Rift Herald, they should have the tempo advantage, and they should be able to keep pushing up towards top.
They're actually just going to let it go down.
They're just going to trade towers for now. They want to be in a position to potentially contest the Drake, and they're just going to force Splyce to answer up topside, which means the Roccat, they can just rush towards the Drake, set up before it, and then they can be the first to make the play.
Yeah. Does look like they're not keen to really give up any objectives, even for trading. If they can just contest every single one of them, they can keep it on the up and up. Still in the gold lead, of course, is 3-5 in the kills, as we're not quite 20 minutes on the clock. You saw a little bit earlier, Memento, his jungle proximity this game has been really high because he's just been so active, matching Xerxes gang for gang.
He has also been one of the contributors to the early deficit that Roccat were in, going back to base on a ward and looking to try and make a play towards bot side, which Splyce very eloquently countered. But remember that it is important for Roccat to have this early game advantage, given that they do have the Xayah Rakan, they had the roaming potential from Blanc on this Taliyah, and they also have Skarner, who eventually will get outscaled into the late game, especially when things like QSS will come through, and the reality that Zach is an excellent teamfight jungler.
And the reality that Cassian's 5-0.
Yes.
That's not going to help.
That is an unpleasant reality for Roccat. He's going to very quickly reach that Lich Bane state. He's picked himself up a tier. Wow. Really going for that full scaling build. And this is where we'll start to see a little bit more of a split up around the map. This is where it could be difficult for Roccat, but they have a lot of roaming tools, you know, mainly with the Taliyah. They still have a TP up for Profit. Double TP is going to be available once again for Splyce very, very quickly. Baron is coming up soon. All big points that both teams are going to want to make sure that they can control.
Some of those extended team fights is certainly going to help Roccat, that they've been able to secure both the Ocean Drakes in this game so far. Once again, really contesting heavily for the objectives. It's been a pretty focused game for them.
It certainly has been, and I want to take this opportunity, observers, if you could just show us the vision around the map right now, largely just for Roccat and how much control they actually have over the entirety of the map. You can just see full river control towards the top side.
And the jungle.
Yeah, and you just contrast that to how much Splyce can see on the map right now, because they're kind of being forced into utter darkness, given that Roccat have so much early pressure. You can see one control ward littered towards the top side near their red. They have one ward down by the Gromp and Splyce. They basically see nothing right now, just as the Baron spawns. So Profi is going to keep creating pressure down towards the bot side. Now, what you typically expect is Roccat try and force a TP out from Splyce so they can then keep Profit towards the bottom side and they can look to make an early Baron play. But instead, they're actually grouping towards bot. They wanted to threaten Odo. He's now back, so they're going to go back to base, reset, buy a couple control wards, and look to keep the pressure onto Splyce.
Yeah, definitely the thing that Roccat does incredibly well, maintaining control of this map here. Got to take a look at some of those vision scores, especially coming out of the jungle, and also in the support role. Norscaron's been doing real serious work, and you compare that to what Kasing's been putting down, it's just not quite the same.
Oh, the Baron dance now begins, Pyra. Back and forth constantly. The gold is still very even. This is a perfectly fine situation for Splyce with the scaling comp. Caitlyn yet to hit 2 items, so she's in a bit of a lull. Xayah definitely going to be stronger at this point in the game, but it's that 5-0 casting you keep alluding to.
Yeah, the Lich Bane comes up now. Xerxes looking to try and go on to Heatcube, throws out the Featherstorm, gets a Blade Caller back, so Xerxes is unable to complete the gank. Splyce overextend on their hand.
A lot of respect being shown from Heatcube that burns both the ulti and the heal. Doesn't want to risk getting collapsed upon. Splyce now, they're the ones regaining vision control around the river, but just keep looking at the inventories the Roccat have. The moment they get an opportunity, the moment they create a window to move into the river, it's very easy for them to just reclaim that vision control. And now there is a window of opportunity being created as Profit is pushing in through the bottom lane. Expect him to group, use the numbers advantage to regain vision control, and Splyce they're not going to have any wards, and that's when Roccat will look to force the Baron.
They're making this work right now. Splyce just can't do anything but dance to the beat of Roccat, controlling as much of the pit and as much of the map as they can. Splyce did come in early to try and pop down a couple of wards, but those are going to be sniffed out really easily as Norscaron and Blank step into the bush. Or are they?
Right now they're just focusing on clearing out the waves, showing a lot of respect over to Splyce, either looking for a pick or just looking for an out-of-position member. They even choose to go back and reset once again. A little bit surprising, given that Splyce actually haven't backed yet. They haven't restocked on their wards, but they're playing the safe game. They're just going to focus even more on vision. Buy a couple of extra items, it seems, Pyra.
Seems like Roccat are keen to just try and find a couple of those picks before they go for a big objective like the Baron. especially when you consider the fact that Memento, he's now not just got the Predator boots, but he has the right to score. He's going to be wiggling real fast if he finds anybody.
Mallet now picked up for Profit as well. That's going to make things very difficult for Odo. Things looking very good right now for Roccat. Even though the gold lead isn't monumental, they have a lot of control over the map. It's all about the execution around Baron. I've personally been a big advocate for Rockat's Baron play. During the regular season, they showed a lot of good control, a lot of restraint. They weren't ones to take big gambles, but the same can be said for Splyce. How many times have they been able to thwart teams trying to set up around that objective? As it is now Splyce pushing in down the middle lane.
All right, they're going to try to get that siege on, but the mini wave is melting pretty fast. They do get a root onto Norscaron, but he's going to get a knock-up and a lock-up suppression, dragging him right back in. Memento finding Odoamne, but the train's leaving the station, or is it? It's going to get interrupted as Heat Q picks up the finishing blow on the kill. Blank getting low, but getting healed, and now the fight is continuing to go back and forth. Prophet gets pulled in, he's fine. He's got the big Gnar. The battle dance, Norscaron trying to go in with the grand entrance. Not going to happen, though, as the black shield was on, and Nisqy picks up kill number 6.
And a bit of a miscommunication there between Prophet and Norscaron will result in the loss of his life and an overall 1-for-1 trade. Splyce, they wanted to try and force that mid tower down. They knew that Prophet was in the bottom lane. They were the ones trying to take advantage of the side lane pressure that they have. The play itself was pretty good, but the execution, that's what was lacking. Odoamne, he overextended underneath the tower. He disrespected the ability for Roccat to collapse, and he ends up losing his life. And that should have been a lot worse for Splyce. But as we mentioned, slight misplay, slight communication issues there for Roccat does mean that it ends up being a 1-for-1 trade.
Now we're going to get to see how it unfolded once again. Kasing stepping forward, trying to find someone on that Dark Binding, and you know the rest.
Yeah, and this is it. See, so he wants to try and walk up, hit the tower. He shouldn't really need to. He should rely on the Caitlyn to damage the tower. Ends up getting caught back. A lot of ultis were used, which means that Roccat at this point can't really commit to the fight. But Prophet goes in. He's trying to threaten some of the front line, maybe ulti under the tower. And then there you go. Prophet flashes out, Norscaron flashes in. And now that 5-0-0 cast in becomes 6-6. 6-0-0.
He's hard to catch, too. He's got a QSS in his inventory as well as he keeps stacking that tier up. And it seems like he can just afford to do this because he's not getting any weaker. And this is the most kills that Nisqy's ever had in a game here in the LCS. He's really stepping up huge.
I mean, this Splyce never really plays around Nisqy. They never try to enable him to be a big carry. And often when Splyce fall behind, it is Nisqy that's one of the big perpetrators to why that's happening. But now he's becoming... He has to be the big carry for this game. Now he has all the kills, he has all the goals. A lot of focus is going to be on him to see how well he can transition this lead into these later fights.
And it's crazy when you consider how, when we were looking at this matchup to set things up, we thought this was going to be the weak point that Roccat were going to be able to attack, because comparing to Blank, Nisqy just didn't look all that good on the stats and in how he was able to play it. It's definitely kind of turned around here. Memento is turned around as well as he gets exhausted trying to find a pick onto either Kobbe or Kasing. Splyce are hanging around though. Here comes Xerxes hopping, insta charm on the Caston. He's going to be able to do enough damage. Odoamne comes right in, and Nisqy deletes EQ off the map, and they are going to be able to clean up the rest of Roccat. Double kill going the way of the Caston. Can he make it a triple? It gets stolen away by Kobbe, and guess what, Vedius? It's Baron time.
Beautiful flank from Odoamne. He hit directly onto the two carries, set up perfectly for the rest of his team to punish. They get themselves 3 kills, and Splyce, they're going to lock themselves in. The first Baron of our quarterfinals.
26 minutes, and Splyce are certainly pulling away from Roccat off a brilliantly executed team fight. Nice collapse all across the board. The only thing you can complain about is Kobbe picked up a kill that clearly was meant for Nisqy.
That's very, very true. 4-9 now in favor of Splyce. This is where things kicked off. Memento gets an exhaust out from Kasing. He's then disengaging. They try and get a bit of vision control. Just keep your eyes on the minimap. Sion comes in from behind. Blanc doesn't block it off. He gets a double knock-up onto the bot lane. Prophet goes into Mini Gnar, and Splyce can just continue the chase. Extremely well done there from Splyce. And good taking advantage of the fact that Odo, he had the push on bot. Prophet was forced to group up with his team. Roccat went to try and go for a pick. And then the moment Roccat tried to disengage, Odo is immediately there to get the follow-up. They get a really good team fight, and now they're the ones in control of the game.
And once again, it seemed like Roccat might have had the tools to stop it for a moment. Norscaron gets the charm off onto Nisqy, but there's no follow-up damage because Xerxes is right in the front of it all. So Splyce are just executing these fights incredibly well.
Extremely well. Still, they're the ones in control of the game right now. A lot of their power spikes have been hit. This is the late game that we were talking about for Splyce. They have now reached it. Level 16 Kassadin, that's the Terra Pyra. His ultimate is on like a 1.6 second cooldown right now.
Dude, he's maxed out on the Darksteel. He should just get a Medjai's at this point. It's going to be really scary. So he can also split push very effectively.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about
that.
Yeah, no, Blanc can't either. He is going to get crushed. You can see very early Banshee's Veil coming out from Blanc to try and mitigate some of that. But Nisqy, it's really difficult to catch him as well because they don't have enough CC with this comp. He has the QSS, he has the Riftwalk. This becomes very, very difficult right now for Roccat. They're just going to have to do their best to stall out the Baron, look for a pick with the Skarner. Maybe they can find a good flank off with Prophet. But right now, this is Splyce setup. Yep. Try and close out the first game.
And nowhere is the gap really right now more apparent than the items between the two mid laners. You already alluded to the Banshee's Veil. On top of it, he's got a Seraph's Embrace. But then, yeah, everything. Nisqy is not short for cash at the moment.
No, he is not. So, how are Splyce setting up the map right now? We can see they do have a push down in the bottom lane. They will have to answer that top wave, but for now, they don't need to go and deal with it. Mandrake isn't going to be spawning for a while, and they still have a minute left on the Baron. So ideally, they want to regain mid control. They want to look to invade the enemy jungle and start getting slightly deeper vision and look to either make a play towards that mid tier 2 or play towards the bot. Given that they've sent Kassadin down there for now, you would imagine that they'll push in this mid wave and head towards the bot side, try and secure this tower with what remains of their Baron.
Still 50 seconds. Prophet is going to go to match. He's near enough on the Narbar, but not feeling confident that the rest of Roccat can hold off this Splyce push in the mid. Rocket's still a little slow to respond, trying to get there, but the Caitlyn trap's deterring them. And it's looking like Splyce are going to be able to chunk this one down pretty easily. There's not a lot of damage that Roccat can push out.
Prophet even scared to go 1v1 against Nisqy. He has very little magic resistance. That tower is dropping extremely quickly.
Nisqy doesn't have to do anything, he just lets the Winions take it.
Yep, the Cannon going to be doing a lot of work. You can see Splyce on their way through the enemy jungle. Hiku here to try and help, but Splyce, they know what they want, and they're going for it.
Okay, Xerxes hopping in, but they didn't commit to it, instead preferring the towers to Splyce. That's number 6 for them. Rocket have only been able to find the outers of their opposition this game. And with the Perrin buff all wrapped up now, it's closer and closer to that 30-minute mark, but Rocket needs some time to try and get back into this one.
You know, and this early game looked very good for Rocket. Yes, very early on. It ended in a little bit of disaster.
They picked it up, though.
Exactly that. That's the point that I was trying to get to. That Memento was able to find a couple of better opportunities down towards the bottom lane. Rocket, they were able to secure a lot of the outer towers, and they had good control over the enemy jungle. But then they were a little too afraid to force things. They had an item advantage with their AD carry, yet didn't try to gamble any fights. They played things a little too safe. They didn't want to run the risk. And then that allowed Splyce to find that one big team fight around the Baron area. That's given them so much more control over the game. And Splyce, as they've shown over the last few weeks, once they get ahead, it is very difficult to get it back from them.
Yeah, they are able to snowball things. Maybe not always in the early game, but generally speaking, they can just run away with those leads. It's going to be hard to break through the front line if Rocket want to try and take a fight. That's 2 Warmog's armors on Odoamne and Xerxes. But everybody's been executing well, and who would have thought we'd be talking about Nisqy being the biggest factor in this game 1 of Splyce?
Yeah. It's quite fascinating because when you look at Nisqy as an individual, he actually gets a decent amount of the gold on Splyce, yet he doesn't really do very much with it. He's not very efficient with the resources invested into him, but I feel like this game will pad his stats out a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
8-0 and 1.
Look at post-split stats only, and Nisqy is looking like a guy.
But even then, like on a Kassadin, you don't actually do that much damage. You kind of jump in, you hit someone, and then dash out again. It's like short essence of burst. So maybe he will still be affected. Regardless, his impact is clearly very visible, given that no one can really rival him down in the bottom lane. Splyce now just using him to buy a little bit more time, keep pressure towards the bottom side of the map, as we imagine Splyce looking towards the top side as Baron will be spawning about a minute and a half.
I think it's important to note, though, for Rocket that despite the fact they're getting pushed deeper and deeper into their own territory, they've maintained this vision control. A lot of it is going away now because Splyce can march in and just take it. But Rocket continue to keep these wards down to keep eyes on what Splyce is doing so they don't have to walk in blind.
Vision is important, and we knew it would be important coming into this game. Rocket utilized it effectively, or mostly effectively, to counter gank against Xerxes. Unfortunately, it was them that ended up getting picked off a lot. And I feel like a lot of this game has been execution errors for Rocket. Didn't play entirely well to their win conditions very early on. Memento maybe should have spent a little bit more time towards the bot side rather than even considering going top. But That's the advantage of best of 5 Pyra. There is an opportunity to adapt. Things aren't entirely over yet for Roccat. They still have the ability to steal away the Baron, maybe get a good fight, but it's difficult because the scaling is on Splyce's side. They're known as a very good team-fighting team. It's an 8-0-1 Kassadin that's basically full build.
Caitlyn's got the 4 items now. I mean, yeah, everything's really coming together for Splyce.
Exactly.
This is going to be hard to bring back. Not impossible, but pretty difficult.
Yes, it certainly will be. So, the Splyce, the veteran roster, going up against the young rookie talent that is Roccat. Very little playoff experience. We'll have to see how Roccat can adapt. They are guaranteed at least 2 more games, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, let's not write it before it's all over. Well, looks like the Baron due to come up in a couple of seconds. Let's see how fast Splyce want to try and make a play for it, or if they just actually look to bait out Roccat. This is the experience coming through. Oh, Kasing. He sends one Dark Binding, goes a little bit wide. EQ popping the Featherstorm, and in goes North Scare. Another combo. Can they get the deletion? It's Xerxes that goes down, but that's the tank. That's not who they want, and it's going to be an answer back on the Skarner. Now the Pain Train's coming in. The double kill for Nisqy, and Splyce turn it right around after Roccat spent everything they had in the tank. Kobbe guns down Blank, and even Prophet can't get away as easily. Gets pulled back in by the Goo. The Decimating Smash into Mega Gnar form. Kobbe getting the double kill as he picks off the final member, and that is everyone gone. Ace at 33.5.
5-0, Splyce take everything from Roccat. They're not going to need the Baron, they simply want the base as they look to secure the first game in this quarterfinal.
All they needed was the fight, not the objectives. Now, they don't have any minions right now, so they're actually going to walk away because they can't
might have
quite
to go
end
for
it.
Baron Pyra. Yeah, they don't have the minions. They can't look to quite end things just yet. Our calls were a little premature.
Man, that was going to be such a cool ending, too.
Yeah, we set up perfectly.
That is, you are unlucky.
Unlucky. Well, looks like Splyce won't be as they secure themselves a Baron.
Yeah, no contest possible here. I don't care how fast Memento is. He's not going to be able to get to the 5th time for
exactly
steal away.
that. Inhibitor did go down as well in favor of Splyce. Good team fight, but when we bring the replay up, I want everyone to keep their eyes on Memento. Here will be the focal reason as to why Splyce were able to get such a convincing win. Keep your eyes on the jungler. Watch as he flashes in. Fails to get the ulti onto Kobbe, eats a binding, gets locked up, and with him gone, with no engage, no target for the rest of Roccat to follow on, it is very easy for Splyce to re-engage. This is what we talked a lot about this game with regards to Roccat and some of the execution errors, and unfortunately that was a big one in one of the late game fights that secured a 5-0 for Splyce.
Right, I mean, you need to be almost flawless when you're this far behind to be able to try and pull a fight back, but that just kind of goes to show you some of that difference in experience. Memento, he said over and over that he wants to be the leader of this Roccat team. He's the one who's calling the shots for them, trying to set them up to make plays, and that is the big win condition for him to enable them in the early game, in the mid game, and the late game. And it feels like it's getting increasingly desperate here.
And well, they kind of have to be there. 11,000 gold down.
Yes, that's a big number. That's not a lot of gold to work with.
So, crew members grouped up, full Splyce around the middle lane. That will naturally push in. You can see a wave being built up in the bot. Top is kind of even right now. All right, Norscarin. They do have the Baron.
Back.
Elder Dragon spawns in a minute 30. I wonder if Splyce will wait. I mean, I'm sure they want to try and secure that mid, or sorry, the bot tier 3 rather. They'll just keep walking the super minions in the middle lane. I think they can just dive this. I don't think they really have to be afraid of very much, given how much stronger they are than Roccat right now.
Splyce, number ones to overextend in this game for sure. Knocking down the tower should be easy peasy. And just let the minions take care of the rest of it, and that's it. Doors open. Let's see. Prophet goes Mega Gnar, but he's not able to find any damage. Nisqy trying to get a pick off onto Norscarin. Not going to happen as he dances away, but Xerxes going in, looking for a pullback. Not going to happen there, and the inhibitor's still going to fall. All the same, Roccat running out of options, running out of time. They've got a tank. They've impaled Odoamne, but can they take him down? Can they turn the fight? Ace in the hole coming in onto Norscarin. He's going to have to go back to Fountain. The zombie Odoamne comes back in, but with super minions marching towards, with Baron-empowered minions marching in, Splyce might want to just try to end this even in a 4v5 situation. They're going to knock down one. Here goes Norscarin, and he gets the charm up, but he can't find the cast, and Nisqy hopping forward. That's a lot of damage, but not enough to get the execution. They're going to have one final chance to get back into this base, but the Nexus is bare right now. Roccat can't do anything as it just falls down, and off the back of some brilliant team fighting, Splyce put away game 1.
Hiku just... Hiku was wiped off the map.
Oh yeah, he got deleted.
Like, I think that was a 2-shot from Nisqy. Oh man, he was so fed in that game.
Yeah, he was big. Again, I am just so surprised that we saw in game one. Such a massive Nisqy performance. And he just played it well, too. It wasn't just, you know, get a lucky couple of kills. He turned up the heat.
Yeah, he had a big impact that game. He picked up a lot of kills. He did, in fact, have the highest damage dealt. Kind of what you'd expect when someone...
And he built a Mercurial Scimitar, too. That's style points.
12-0-2 is his final score. Well played from him, but overall well played from Splyce. Loved the 0-1 engage in the middle of the game, getting a great flank off, allowing Splyce to get such a convincing teamfight win. For Roccat, they had a lot of things going for them. Once they found the first early tower on the bottom lane, they moved around the map very nicely. They punished a lot of the Xerxes engages. But their execution, their playing towards their win conditions is just what faltered a little bit.
Right.
They will have more opportunities now. As we said, they're guaranteed 3 games. This is a best of 5. You have to have first to 3 will be able to secure a spot.
I'm glad you can do the maths. I don't touch maths on broadcast.
But the thing is, for Roccat, you know, we saw a lot of good things, but this is kind of why so many analysts were expecting Splyce to be the favorites, in that both these teams do a lot of very similar things. They have good control around vision. They team fight both very well. But when it comes to the execution, Splyce often have the edge. So hopefully Roccat will be able to shore that up coming into game 2.
Yeah, we'll see. We haven't seen these guys do best of 5, so now we get to see what kind of stuff they're made of. Now, for more insight on game number 1, let's head over to Shox and Friends at the analyst desk.
And Cole.
Thank you very much. What, are you implying he's not a friend of ours?
I want to be funny.
Well, he was right in the beginning of the day. Vedius just said it, but at the beginning of the day you said, Cold, well, to me, Splyce and Roccat, they're very similar teams, but Splyce does everything a bit better than Roccat does it. And that seemed to be, to me, a bit of the gist of the game, but let's take it from the start. Picks and bans-wise, we talked about keys to victory from Roccat. So what strategy did they go with this draft?
So initially, they actually went with the kind of strategy that I would like to see. The stronger early game jungler, using it into the bottom side of the map where they can play for the first tower, get drakes, and kind of snowball from this. But what happened was that they actually managed to make a lot of mistakes in between that gave Kassadin a lot of kills. And when Kassadin gets a lot of kills, it's not as fun to play League of Legends.
I think we also saw in this draft that Splyce kind of predicted it. They knew giving over the Xayah meant at least they would have some sort of picks they could use in lane against it. So the Caitlyn Morgana is a fine answer. Obviously, if you then end up getting attacked by a jungler and a mid laner, it gets hard. And that's why the Taliyah pick actually made a lot of sense for Roccat specifically, to say, okay, now we have a mid lane champion who can actually fully snowball the 2 side lanes in this case.
Unfortunately, the snowball went the other way, Splyce's way, and it wasn't from lack of trying from Memento. Actually, it was because of his trying.
Tried too much.
We said he was the key to a lot of what Roccat could do in this matchup, but unfortunately, the timing just was a bit off.
Yeah, so basically here we see Memento getting picked off. But what is more important than this specific clip is what happened before this in the mid lane, where both Memento's flash was forced, but also both sums from Taliyah was forced. And this kind of snowballed into Splyce being able to punish.
Yeah, and I do want to highlight, I think Memento going top there was the wrong call. They even kind of called off the play before it even happened. There was a Sion sitting there with passive, plus they didn't know where Xerxes would be. They probably had quite an idea that he was going to be topside to potentially defend this dive. So they called it off. And it actually meant they couldn't make this play on the bottom side earlier. Taliyah had level 6, Kassadin had no TP at that point. They could have tried to execute this exact play we saw where he died the second time, but they waited until double TP was available, and suddenly 5 members of Splyce read the situation. They TP'd down, they killed Memento again, and while they actually did succeed in getting early turrets down, as you see on your screen right here with Nisqy, he's Kassadin. He got 5 early kills. It doesn't matter how well you play around towers. That Kassadin will forever be a problem.
Well, a funny note that I saw on the LoL Esports stats Twitter said, well, Nisqy had 5 games by the 15-minute mark. He didn't even have a single more than 5 kills game in the entire regular season. So at that point, you think, as Roccat, it looks pretty bad. They managed to hold their own, though, pretty good, but you knew that they were playing against a timer. You know that Kassadin is just going to completely run over you in the mid-game.
And I mean, it's pretty good for Splyce, to be honest, that we see Nisqy pop off like this, because in the preview, we were talking about that the bot lane could step up. We saw that top lane stepping up, but now we see Nisqy actually stepping into a carry role, and I think this should make the matchup even harder for Roccat if the trend continues.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just a little bit sad because they actually had a decent tower lead. They got Rift held as well. They did a lot of things correct, as you said, in terms of getting down objectives. There was still only 1k gold ahead at 20 minutes. And Kassadin had like 2.5 items and a QSS on the way like a minute later. So they were on a timer. that timer suddenly was impossible for them to beat because this Kassadin was fed free kills, a champion who normally never gets early kills. So it just made it almost impossible.
Yeah, when he does get those kills, he is something to fear. Let's take a look at the replay, a very painful one from the side of Roccat. It is where Kassadin can really show his might, and it's what locks up the game for Splyce.
Also, I like the engage.
Yeah.
Xerxes into Odamna already calling. He's coming from the bottom side, and then, of course, the fed Kassadin one-shots whatever target he jumps. And the moment they lose this fight, it was completely over.
And it's pretty much just a dream for the Kassadin that he has two heavy tanks that can just force the fight whenever. And he can kind of wait until cooldowns are used, and then he can jump in. And then we just see what Kassadin can do. And I think at this point, it just becomes very hard for Roccat to actually win the game.
It is, and I do want to echo what you just said, Cold, about Nisqy being the only person we had question marks about for him. For him, this must be a tremendous boost to his confidence, knowing that he could do this in game 1. It can be worse game 2, right? Other members on Splyce can step up, but his confidence should hopefully make Splyce's chances even bigger, and unfortunately for Roccat, make it even harder.
Yeah, and also in a best of 5 already, when you pull out things like Kassadin early, you show it against the Taliyah. The team like Roccat will have to think about that for the next draft. I think they're going to, on Rockat's side, actually have to look at the game 2 and decide, okay, do we want to go for the bot lane snowball again, which worked okay, and it was taking more on the jungle.
It was fine. Like, they were actually doing the right moves in terms of getting the towers rotating into mid, getting the mid tower against the Kassadin, which you should always look to do. So they were doing the right steps, but I felt like they were doing it too slow because of the mistakes they're doing. And that
set them behind.
Yeah, and it set them behind in time, where they should be maybe 3 or 4k gold ahead. They were only like 1k gold ahead.
So basically, at the end, you'd want to see the same strategy is still viable for you guys, for Roccat to focus on that bottom lane, and hopefully the jitters from game 1 and what they've seen should put that timing.
That's like the super exciting part about a best of 5, because you have the opportunity to try what failed if you think you can redo it and do it better. So it's all on Roccat. I think what they showed in the first game was that they were just not executing 100% correctly, and I think they can actually do it if they play it one more time. So I would love to see them do it again.
I think they might have to remove some other champions, though. I feel like the Vladimir ban in Phase 2 and the Olaf ban didn't really do much against Splyce, because in Splyce's case, the fact they get to draft a Zac for Xerxes, which is his best pick by far, and then they also get a tank top for Odamna to where he can actually play engage. It just meant that like this death ball comp, where the moment they get to actually go as 5, they can just hard engage every single time.
Worth banning out the Zac?
I think in the second phase, instead of banning all of Vladimir, you could definitely have banned the Zac.
It was like Xerxes really good, but he's especially good on Zac, as are most junglers. So.
Yeah, and it's not saying that they couldn't have beaten it, because it made sense what they were trying to do in putting him on a slower jungler.
Also, just Olaf as a pick is a power pick in almost any region at the moment, but I don't think we have seen Xerxes play it. So in series like this, you can actually try to test players. Like, are you comfortable playing this champion? It's a very demanding champions in terms of that you cannot really do mistakes as a Olaf, else you will just be useless in the game. So I wanna see them try more. In the
we want to see Roccat try more. It was gonna be rough for them, and it just got rougher. They need to come up with some answers, because there's a ticket to Copenhagen on the line in this series, with the 80 carry star Kobbe looking to get a shot on stage at the Royal Arena from the side of Splyce. But before we go to break, let's hear from another famous Dane about what it means to play in your home country.
Man ser altid folk, der fra deres eget hjemland spiller finalerne. De sådan som Soas i Frankrig, hvor folk gælder ikke Soas, og han har den der kappe med flaget på, og det er mega fedt og alt det der. Så jeg tænker altid på, at det vil jeg gerne have. Jeg ved, at Østrig og mig havde de danske flag rundt om sådan kappen, og så kunne gå ind på stage, og folk ville have den på mig og på os. Det var mega fedt, men det sker ikke.